Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, roll call. Let the record reflect that all directors are present. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda tonight.
All right, may I have a motion?
I'll move the agenda.
I'll
And-
second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Agenda is approved. Moving on to public comment. We will start with in-person. Mr. Barnes, public comment? Of course.
I am coming today mainly to make a comment about the letter in the back of today's packet from somebody about salaries. But before I made that comment, I just wanted to say that from my perspective, it's very pleasant to be here with Kim Sevey not here and Steve Kennedy not involved. I've been reading that Steve Kennedy has been up to some shenanigans up in Wrightwood, and I'm glad that we are not affiliated with him anymore. And my personal opinion, Kim Sevey was a big part of issues that caused me to get involved in the first place, and it's probably for the best that she's gone. So with that said, there's a letter talking about whether or not our general manager is overpaid. And, you know, these things come along, and I just wanted to respond to the person who, I don't know if the name was taken off or if they submitted it anonymously, very brave, but I attended the meeting, the last board meeting, where the general manager's salary was discussed and then approved. I attended it specifically to make sure that there were no shenanigans, that it was a legitimate salary, that it was a legitimate process, that we weren't just paying him to do stuff and it was too much. And I looked through it and I walked away and I said, you know what, I think it's okay. And, you know, there's different theories about how to manage companies, organizations, businesses, whatever. I would just like to point out to the board that we have a very recent example right up the road with Sheep Creek Water Company of maybe mismanagement of their staff. So, you know, 3 years ago, I believe it was, the general manager at Sheep Creek Water Company left and became an employee here. I could be incorrect in my understanding of the situation, but my understanding was Sheep Creek was offered a chance to match the salary offer that this person received and chose not to. And so here we are 3 years later. Their budget has grown from 1.2 million to 2 million, partially because they had to hire 4 people to replace the one person who left. And from my perspective, 4 people aren't getting it done. They're not doing as good of a job as that one person did. And so, you know, yes, it can be disconcerting to look and say, oh, we've got salaries that a lot of people in this community don't make. But then when you go look around and say, well, what is that salary bringing us? And are we going to lose more if we don't pay for excellent work and then let that go and then find out that we're paying for subpar work across the board? What are the... On top of that, our general manager has been here since 2008, and there's, yeah, when people stick around, they end up getting paid. It's called loyalty, but it's also called a reward for excellent service. And for myself, in response to that letter, I don't see why we look around and say, oh, these people are being overpaid. They're doing an excellent job in our community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment in person? All right. We do have one person online. Do you have a public comment? No, she's shaking her head no. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we will move on to community reports, and in person we have Sheriff.
Hello, Sergeant Miller from the Phelan Station. For the month of March for Phelan, we had a total of 724 calls for service. 92 were self-generated, so we had a total of 632 with 73 reports generated out of those calls for service. The top 5 calls were information calls at 138, welfare checks at 50, follow-ups at number 3, and wireless number 4, and area checks for number 5. Before I go on into Piñon Hills, does anyone have a question for Phelan calls?
No? Okay.
For Piñon Hills, we had a total of 280 calls for service. 33 of those were self-generated, with a total of 24 reports generated on all those calls for service. The number 1 calls for service was information calls at 69, follow-ups at 27 for number 2, area checks at 16 for number 3, wireless 911s 13 for number 4, and welfare checks number 5 for 12 calls. And nothing significant at this time. Anyone got any questions?
I have a comment.
Great.
Oh, and I'd like to thank the Sheriff's Department. We had an incident in my neighborhood that required immediate response, and you guys arrived on time and took care of business, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, sir. We try.
Thank you. I did notice that the Piñon Hills Chamber of Commerce had Sam Shoup at their recent meeting, and they were talking about an increase in OHV activity in the Piñon Hills area. A lot of children out riding around on dirt roads. Was just wondering if you had any comment on that or had noticed an uptick in that?
In the Piñon Hills?
Piñon Hills area, yes.
I wasn't aware of the Piñon Hills area. I was aware of the county parts of Hesperia, which I covered at the MAC meeting, at the Oak Hills meeting. But as far as OHV calls for service, we don't have a team strategically for OHV at this time. We do have a new division. It's called the Transportation Division, which is obviously you guys are aware that we do the trains and the Victor Valley Transit buses. They oversee that jurisdiction as far as OHV right now. Like for the month of April, every weekend, there's overtime we set aside. So there's at least 3 two-man units out there. I had the one Oak Hills meeting, we discussed like kids riding their thing, their HV or side-by-sides or quads. Is that the issue is because some of these things, there are some good families out there that ride in their neighborhood and people don't care, but then there's one teenagers that don't do it properly. So it makes it tough, but just be aware that side-by-sides aren't registered in California. They can be towed. So we try to be vigilant and educate these people first so they don't get their stuff towed, and educate these kids because there are good families out there that are trying to teach the kids when they go out to do it safely and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but as far as the Piñon Hills, there was a couple calls for service that we dealt with, but as far as a major issue, I was not been told that there's a major issue.
Okay.
If that's so, I will look into it for you.
Yeah, we did have quite a few 6 or 7 side-by-sides with the whips and the lights and everything going, actually driving on Highway 138 to go to that Shell station.
They're probably going to there's been trails, is it on the weekend?
Yeah,
They're probably going out there. Matter of fact, there is a group that's working overtime this weekend. I will make aware, maybe they can
Nice.
get a unit out this way and they can work their way back to where they're going on the east side.
all right, appreciate that. Thank
Not
you
a
very
problem.
much.
Anything else?
All right. Any other questions? No? All right, thanks so much. All right, moving on to item 3, consent items. Does anyone have any items they would like to pull?
I would. I'd like to pull 3B and 3F.
3B and 3F. Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the consent items, removing 3B and 3F?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So we will move on to matters removed matters removed from consent items. We will start with 3B. All right, questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. Okay, so looking at the budget, we're estimated to be over budget for 2024-2025 year for board fees. by approximately $2,600. That is an estimate on our budget. I have a feeling that's a low figure. I think it's going to come in higher than that, but still estimated at that. If the quantity of meetings continue as they happened in January through March of 2025, will not be in budget for next year either. So I think this needs to be looked at. 2025-2026 budget allows for $36,000 for meetings. That averages out to 5 meetings per month for each board member, and between board and committee meetings, some months reach that average alone. Then when you consider other outside meetings and conference meetings, it brings the average even higher. So I'm thinking we need to talk about GM meetings and other outside meetings. They need to be held to a minimum in order to stay within budget, or the budget needs to be changed, and I'm not advocating for that. I think that's probably a decent number. So I just felt like we needed to discuss it as a board.
I think with that being with that being an item that's not on the agenda tonight, we could actually put that on a future agenda and bring that up for discussion and bring the whole the policy and everything else back to the board for discussion.
Very good.
Perfect, yes. I actually have pulled Resolution 2023-04 and 2020-01. Wes and I have been talking about it, and he has sent me some things. I have not had time to read them yet, but I do believe we're discussing the legal aspect of where the 10 meetings a month came up, and so we definitely want to bring that back for a future agenda item.
Yes, and we can have that discussion because we fall under 2 codes. One is the community services and the other one is under water code. And I know that between the 2 of them, they have a different set amount of meetings that are allowed per month.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Great. All right, thank you very much. Does that answer all of your questions on that one?
Yes, because we're going to discuss it later, so I think we're good.
Okay. And then item 3F.
Okay, so 3F. Our budget allows for $5,000 per board member for reimbursed expenses. Although we haven't finished the year this year, we still have a partial quarter to go. As a group, we're in budget, but not individually. It's important that we are good stewards of the district funds. How can we keep the expenses in line going forward individually? And then I noticed then in resolution, and this is probably for future agenda, but this is what we need to put on the agenda. Resolution 2023-04, 2.4 budget limits, separate board approval is required when over $5,000 limit is reached for reimbursements. And we do have 1 board member over that, so I think that should be addressed.
yeah, I think we could probably handle those at the same time.
Very good.
Great. Okay, so those will be future agenda items. All right, perfect.
Is it possible for the first one of next month?
I will not be attending the first meeting of next month. I would like to be here. I think I could give some good historical kind of information on that. If you prefer to have it, that's fine. I have staff here that can handle it, but I probably would prefer to be for that meeting.
Probably should be, since some of it has to do with GM meetings. You could probably clarify that. I guess my concern is with that second with F. Within the next little bit of time, that number for the 1 is going to be much higher. I don't know if we can cancel anything, but you might maybe look at it between now and the next meeting that we address it.
Will do.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so now we need to go back and approve 3B and 3F, or not approve 3B and 3F. Yes?
That is correct.
Thank you. All right, so I guess we'll take them one at a time. 3B, I would need a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve that one.
Chuck, go ahead. Thank you. All right, all in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. And then 3F, motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to oppose on that one.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to item number 5, presentation and appointments. Presentation on Chromium 6 regulations compliance strategies.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, Sean is going to be presenting this item. We do have one page that's been modified. I'm not sure what the page number is, but everybody was handed that. And that had to do with there was a change on the history of chromium-6 regulations. At the bottom of that page, there was a chart. So if you could just replace that one page, it incorrectly showed the length of time that the chromium-6 charge was going to be paid for by the customers. So with that, we have the updated one, and Sean can take it from there. And as we go along, if you have questions, I think we have enough time, since we have a fairly light agenda, to get into a good discussion about this.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Sean?
page 106 for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Bart. The district has a bit of a history with
microphone on?
the lights on.
Can you crank it up a little bit?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Is it working? The district has a bit of history with hexavalent chromium. What we'd really like to do is present where we started, where we're at, and where we're going, and the strategies that available to the district for chromium mitigation. For that, we're going to kind of take a look at understanding the history and the future of chromium-6. So, what is hexavalent chromium? Hexavalent chromium, commonly referred to as chromium-6, is a naturally occurring metal found in rock, soil, and groundwater. It can come from industrial pollution. That's not really the source in our district. Chromium loves to hide in clay, either above or below those stratified clay layers. What are the health implications of chromium-6? There are no confirmed cases of health problems caused by naturally occurring chromium-6 in California's drinking water. So I know there were some cases in the news some time ago, maybe to the north 100 miles. Completely different than what our district's experiencing, right? That was industrial caused. Ours is 100% natural. Health risks are based on animal studies and high-level industrial exposure. California's regulation includes a large safety margin to protect public health over a lifetime. So the history of chromium-6 in regards to the district, back in the 1970s, the total chromium monitoring began with the Clean Water Drinking Act. In 2001, chromium-6 Standard Pacific development began, and in 2014, an MCL was established at 10 parts per billion that, as we know, in 2017 was later invalidated by the courts based upon its economic feasibility. As we moved into 2014, that MCL was formally readopted, giving districts our size till October 1st, 2027, streamlining and mandating the compliance period. So that is basically the district's drop-dead window. We have till October 1st, 2027 for all of our ducks to be in a row. Back in 2014, the district did develop a blending project. In 2014 dollars, that was about $17 million. That would have included 14 miles of pipeline from our distribution facilities along Highway 18, extending north to the former Meadowbrook property. That included 2 new blending reservoirs, 2 new blending stations, and an OEM surcharge that would have lasted in perpetuity. So if we look to the graphic on the right here, and that's the graphic Don's referring to that's been updated, that chromium-6 surcharge in 2018 would have also had an O&M component of $2.31 for a total of $12.02 that would have escalated about 3% annually. And I would like to note that originally the chromium surcharge at $9.71 would have sunsetted in 2036. And these are the next 3 dates we're really like to key in here. That 971 would have sunsetted in 2036. That O&M charge at 231 would have been in perpetuity, escalating 3% forever. And the graphic illustrates in 2058, that would have been up to $7.54. And as we'll segue into, currently the district's chromium surcharge of $9.71 is set to will sunset February of 2029. There's that second important date we're touching on. So if we change nothing, February 29, that would fall off. We've proposed several options that we're really going to dip into in maybe an agenda item here in the next 30 minutes or so. Staff is proposing several changes and modifications to the capital improvement plan and accelerating, which would push that sunset date back about 18 months to July 2030. So those are the three important dates I really would like to emphasize. Originally 2036, we moved that back with all the chromium profiling and mitigation to February 29, and the proposed changes we're going to really hone in on this evening would take that to July 2030. So worst case scenario, we were still able to drop dead at 6 years early. The district and its chromium-6 mitigation journey. It's been a doozy. From 2014 to 2016, we identified 5 wells exceeding that new MCL of 10 part per billion. In 2017, we developed a blending strategy and acquired some additional water rights to support chromium mitigation. Presently today, we've successfully profiled wells 6A, 6B, and well 10 as a short-term, more cost-effective alternative. And I'd like to note on 6A and 6B, we were actually able to increase water yield while reducing hexavalent chromium concentration. That's not always the case, and especially as we talk about these upcoming projects, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. However, profiling does result in usually a significant loss of production. So when we do profile other wells, sometimes we have to give up to 2/3 the capacity. So the key takeaway, the district needs to evaluate its long-term solution to restore and secure water supply that it can assure long-term compliance with state regulations. That brings us into choosing a mitigation strategy. When we look into strategies, what should be considered? The long-term sustainability of that solution, the security of that water supply, and the long-term compliance with state regulations. And what are the challenges in said compliance? Certainly the financial constraints, the geographical environmental factors, and the regulatory complexities of that strategy. One challenge that might not be noted on here can also be proximity to infrastructure and topography. Pressure certainly plays into a mitigation strategy as well. Other considerations bring us into tariffs, right? It's in the news, it's present, it's happening. Pumps we used to be able to get in a week can take up to 6 months. As we touched on months ago, electrical components can be up to 2 years out. Then these used to be 1 to 2 weeks out. The material costs and trends that we've seen, steel casing, has already been affected because that predominantly comes from China, India, and Vietnam. Domestic mills have and or will raise prices to match or exceed the global prices. We're forecasting a 15 to 25% in utility grade steel by mid-2025. Electrical equipment, pump panels, SCADA motors affected by both tariffs and the global semiconductor lag. Again, SCADA, we used to see a 2 to 3 month lag on PLCs. That can be up to 12 months right now. Those long lead times are still very much an issue with a forecasted increase of 10 to 20%. Should we even take those tariffs into consideration? Absolutely. Tariffs and inflation are real risks. Recent tariffs are likely to increase those prices both globally and domestically due to market price shadowing. Fiscal conservatism dictates that the district consider price increases. If costs are expected to rise, it would be in the district's interest to act sooner rather than later. But there are reasons to be cautious. Forecasting those costs too precisely can lead to false confidence, criticism if it doesn't align at a later date, and pressure to show cost control in a volatile market. And the key takeaways from this would be an estimated blanket of 8 to about 15% in increase is appropriate. Conservative estimates, because even if the district buys domestic suppliers adjust prices upward to match that global market. and we have a graphic kind of illustrating oil market volatility, tariffs, global supply constraints, rising labor and diesel costs, kind of how those affect their related markets. All right. What strategies do we have available to us? Strategy one would be a pipeline down to the Meadowbrook Dairy. I believe most of us were at that ribbon cutting when we ribbon cut for well 15, and we looked north and you could see that big white wall of containers. That kind of gives us just a vision of we'd have to go from point A to point B. Like every option, there's pros and cons. The pros to this option are the district would have access to wells that have non-detect chromium-6 in their initial testing, provides system redundancy, and it reduces the reliance on blending and mitigation elsewhere in the distribution system. It would also diversify the electrical portfolio of our production assets. That would lie on a fourth electrical circuit rather than the three that currently the district utilizes. But this option is not without cons. Some of the cons to this option are the high capital costs. The actual installation of the pipeline is estimated between $3.5 and $4 million, depending on the effect of the tariffs. Additional upfront costs for the engineering study. Long project time. For said studies, pipeline we might be able to get done a little quicker. Challenging CEQA and environmental reviews. High energy and O&M costs. O&M, apologize. And the risk of underperformance. Those wells were initially tested, it has been over a decade, and they were not stressed heavily like municipality wells. They were put through a 24-hour segment, not a 72-hour. Key takeaways would be chromium-6 levels could rise in those wells under high pumping conditions, jeopardizing the benefit of that project.
Okay, Sean, before you jump into
Yes.
number 2, let's do questions for number 1 first. Does anybody have any questions on that? Not yet? Great, okay, thank you. Oh,
Operation and maintenance. And I apologize, I've been
I wasn't sure if it was management or maintenance. I was
dealing with car problems the last 2 days, so OEM stuck in
OEM
my
parts.
mind. So it's O&M, operation and maintenance cost.
So I actually have a couple questions about this. So we have test wells, but not actual wells, so this would
Negative,
involve
sir.
digging new wells?
No, sir. It would be utilizing the existing wells on the property. They were initially tested over a decade ago, put under some stress, about 24 hours. Municipalities don't pump their wells under some stress. Municipalities pump their wells under extreme stress. So it would be stressing those wells to match the utilization of a municipality. 72 hours, you see that plane level off. Those wells would need to be tested and up to or past 72 hours to make sure water quality doesn't change.
Would they need to be rehabbed or retrofitted or anything?
Yes. Any well that's set the duration of a decade, you could throw a pump in there and hope for the best, but you would first camera it and evaluate.
Can you-
oh, sorry.
Can you remind me how many wells are down there? I don't remember.
There's 8. We can't utilize all 8. There's really 3 that pique interest, with a 4th that doesn't currently have a sanitary seal. Sanitary seals can be added. They are a must for a community potable well. You cannot permit a well that does not have a sanitary seal. There's risks associated with that. You can try and over drill it, the well can collapse. When we ran the estimate for this scenario, we did not incorporate that particular well. There's really 3 wells down there that pique our interest, with the 4th being a bonus. If it were to accept a sanitary seal and stay viable, that would be kind of the cherry on top, but it was not taken into consideration for that, just the 3.
And one other question, Sean, what are your environmental concerns in that area?
First and foremost, it was a dairy.
Right,
Dairies are synonymous with cow poop. Cow poop's synonymous with nitrates. We don't have to look too far. Cities like Norco, Chino, nitrates are not if, but rather when. We have something that those communities don't. We have two things in our favor: 500 foot of soil between the cow poop and our water table. There's also a stranded aquifer that sits above the one we would really look at, and there's a lot of clay lensing that helps insulate that aquifer that we really are interested in. Those areas like Chino, Norco don't have that luxury. So we're very well insulated, but that certainly is a concern we took into consideration.
Thank you very much.
I have a question, Sean. With the aquifer down there, has it been categorized into different water producing zones?
Yes,
How many zones do we have down there?
there's two distinct zones.
2 distinct zones.
While we could go down a rabbit hole on profiling, because we are very fortunate to have a lot of clay lensing, there is two categorical zones, an upper and a lower aquifer. There is a water, I can't even call them a water district, it's a small community, I believe Camisol is a mutual.
Yes, it's a mutual.
There's a small mutual out there that their wells are in that perched aquifer above the one that has much better quality and much more yield.
And then on that aquifer down there, do we know what it is to bedrock, or they've only drilled so far and stopped?
Our wells are only down about 1,000 foot, and the driller's reports don't show to bedrock,
Okay.
fortunately.
Thank you.
Yeah, going back to the other water district, the Chamisol, theirs are in the upper aquifer, and they actually hit bedrock with their wells. So they do not, it's close enough to the mountains, I think, was it Gray Butte, I believe, whatever the mountains are right there. The rocks actually go down below the district, so their water level, or their water table is the same, but they don't have the benefit of the lower aquifer. And kudos to Sean. Sean was brought in, I'm just going to give a little narrative on this. Sean was brought in specifically for these water quality issues and dealing with the Chromium 6 project back in 2013, 2014 is when he was brought in, somewhere right in that time frame, specifically for dealing with these issues, and I think they've done a terrific job. The entire staff has.
Definitely.
Thank you, Ms. Bartz. Strategy number 2, drill one new well. So some pros on this one: faster implementation of the project. We can target the design and avoid those chromium SIG zones using well 15 as our analog. Lower upfront costs, about $2 million including the tie-in. Some negatives: adds only limited redundancy and production capacity. Risk of drilling in chromium 6 impacted aquifer if siting is not perfect. Drilling is a risk, of course. It does not diversify our water portfolio as much. The key takeaways from this: success dependent on geologic conditions. If chromium 6 is found, it could require costly treatment or zone isolation. Strategy 3, drilling of 2 new wells. The pros to this: it increases the safe yield and long-term supply reliability. Potential to replace output from our higher chromium 6 wells and reduce the need for blending. The cost is between $3.8 and $4 million. The cost is still lower than strategy 1. Some of the negatives: more land acquisition, siting, and CEQA work. Higher upfront costs than one well, but still lower than the pipeline. The key takeaways from this option: hydrogeologic uncertainty still exists. Even if one well is clean, the second well could encounter hexavalent chromium. So given the 3 options before us, we rated each strategy. And how did we objectively rate each strategy? Trying not to introduce personal bias, politics, but what was best for the district. Each strategy was rated on a 1 to 10, 10 being most favorable, with a weighted score versus its category weight. And on our next page, we have that comparative analysis with a decision matrix, and kudos to Jen for putting all this together. It looks amazing. So the criteria were the system resiliency and redundancy, that water quality certainty, implementation timeline, because again, there is a shot clock on this. We have till October 1st, 2027. Of course, the cost, the regulatory and CEQA complexity, the operational and maintenance costs, the community cost impact, such as surcharges and debt. With those weights, the strategies 1, 2, and 3, and then our score matrix down at the bottom. And we can see strategy 3 with drilling of the 2 new wells does give us the bang for our buck versus the others. And I know there's a lot of information on this page specifically, and happy to answer any questions on here, kind of how we derive these. No? Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm going to do it from up here.
So I understand what you're presenting. I think part of the reason that I actually came tonight was that I'm not understanding why we're picking a strategy now. So I get that we need to pick a strategy. We've been working on this for a long time. These 3 options aren't fixing everything in the district, right? We're talking about drilling 1 well or 2 wells or connecting to the dairy. So are we? I'm not sure why we're picking a strategy now. I think that's my big question.
I think I could help summarize that question
Okay.
pretty quick. When we profile, and we've talked about that for years, we knowingly give up production capacity. Some wells we can increase capacity. That is not the norm by any means. More often than not, we have to decrease the production capacity, often significantly, such as at well 10, we have to cut the production capacity by 2/3. Well 12, we have to do the same thing. Well 14, the cost benefit to profile it just doesn't exist because of the adjudications. And we're going to get into that as the presentation continues on how we replace those production assets. We can't just give up production capacity. We still have to meet community demand. So while we can profile and still get some water out of those profiled wells, the need to replace the production capacity of those profiled wells exists.
I
And
got you.
that
So-
has been part of our long-term strategy for many years.
So profiling is now what we're going to do for sure. And then this is how do we deal with the fact that we're going to have diminished capacity as a result.
Profiling has actually already been done and will continue in conjunction with drilling new production assets if that's what the board elects to do.
And we're hopefully drilling wells that don't have chromium. That's
Correct.
fingers crossed. Okay. I'm more clear. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our recommended path forward with the 3 strategies, our scoring matrix, and our summaries. Strategy 1, with that high cost, highest risk on water quality, regulatory and time hurdles. The benefit if the dairy wells prove to be chromium-6 free, although has been verified, it has not been stressed to capacity. The drilling of 1 well is fast and cost-effective, provides limited resiliency and redundancy, and drilling 2 is the best long-term reliability strategy. It adds resilience, reduces dependency on blending, spreads pumping risk across more resources, does have a higher initial cost but a lower long-term risk. Staff's recommendation will be drilling one successful well, achieving compliance at a minimal cost, but drilling 2 wells prioritizes long-term planning by increasing system reliability, supply redundancy, while also help drought hardening and providing for future demand in the distribution system. And I'd like to note before we get even more further into this, there's actually several other options that got way down a rabbit hole, and I could go for days. The water in the high desert is a very dynamic challenge, right? Certainly, most of us are familiar with our cube. That was one, but the cost benefit is so far out and complex, it does not pencil out. We looked at anion exchange, water treatment. Those capital costs and the ongoing O&M costs would have ate the district alive. How do we fund these strategies? We could accelerate Well 16 project from the 2029-2030 fiscal year to present at $1.8 million. The Well 18 project was and is budgeted for the fiscal year 25-26 for $2 million. We are asking the funds to be reallocated from the well 12 Packer for $150,000 and reallocating the funds from profiling well 14 at $450,000. And this one I'd like to touch on. Why would we do that? Jen, $1,228 an acre foot? Is that today's number? So for us to pump well 14, before we've even paid the electric bill, it's $1,228 per acre foot of water. On top of the electric bill, which is close to $300 an acre foot there. So we're at about $1,550 an acre foot. We can buy water from our neighboring districts for at cost or cheaper than that. It is just not in the district's interest to run that resource. It's really the replacement water from the Antelope Valley that makes that not a viable option. Where do these funds come from? To ensure continued progress on the vital chromium-6 mitigation projects, staff is recommending that 18-month extension of the chromium-6 surcharge of $9.71 per connection. And again, our original surcharge, way back in the day, would have fallen off in 2036. Doing what we've done, profiling, purchasing water rights, would have allowed that surcharge to fall off February 2028. What staff is recommending is to extend that out 18 months, where the surcharge will fall off July 2030. This charge will remain unchanged in amount and would continue to be exclusively used for chromium mitigation efforts. Extending the chromium surcharge will help avoid sudden rate increases or emergency surcharges, limit debt exposure during a time of rising construction costs, and maintain alignment with state-mandated chromium-6 compliance deadlines. Again, to reiterate, that original blending pipeline back 2014 would have been $17 million or $22.8 million if adjusted for inflation today. So the district has realized a savings of over $5 million. We've spent $11.7 million to date. That includes, no, sorry, we changed the graphic a little bit. That includes $704,000 for well profiling and the redevelopment of wells 10, 9A, 6A, and 6B. $2.6 million of purchased water rights, $80,000 for the SCADA server upgrades that can handle all of these modifications, and $132,000 for reservoir 6A and well 18 development costs. And I've been talking my fair share of the time, so thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions because I know we covered a ton of ground and three somewhat similar and somewhat very unique options, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, or actually not questions, but first, Mr. Barnes's question on why pick a strategy. That was actually a great question. And then if I'm a ratepayer, I see what I saw was, hey, rates are going up, or $9.71, the chromium mitigation charge is going on for 18 more months than it would have. So can we explain how this kind of ties into the CIP, where rates were going to be before we move some CIP projects around, and where rates are proposed or where we think we're going to be rate-wise?
Yes, I can handle that one. And Peter, you had a great question there. So what we did is with the next agenda item in meeting with the board over the past few months, we took some of the capital improvement projects from our 10-year capital plan, which our rates are based on. So we have our rates, which are based on our the operating cost of the district and funding future capital projects, which would have been a number of lines that need to be upsized, lowered, installed. We removed those from the 10-year plan at this point until we have another master plan completed in a few years. And what that did is that was able to take the rate increase that was approved when we had the rate study done, which I believe was somewhere around 15 to 16%. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. It could have gone up that much. But by modifying the capital improvement plan, we took out about $8 million of those projects and removed them for now. I'm not sure if they'll be needed in the future, but that would be determined based on growth in the community. With that, we took one of the funding for a well, which I would believe was $2.8 million in 2029, and that's the well that we moved up to this year. And to further touch on what you had talked about the strategy, we had money budgeted. If you look on page 118, we have the funds to be reallocated from well 12 Packer and funds reallocated from profiling well 14. So what that did, those were two projects that were budgeted and they would have been completed. Those would have helped maintain our water supply availability for the district to meet our maximum day demands. In looking at that, and with what Sean just mentioned, is that the cost of producing water from well 14 is so high that we wouldn't want to run well 14. We barely run well 14 now just to keep it clean. But by allocating those funds, which is $600,000, so probably 35–40% of the cost of drilling new well is going to be moved from those projects to drilling the new well, which will give us hopefully good water quality and good production, instead of throwing money into assets that would probably either not be used because of the cost or severely restricted in the amount of water we could pump. As part of the background information that we did, I spent quite a bit of time talking to Mark Roberts. He's been a hydrogeologist up here for over 40 years and knows this desert and the areas for pumping and water quality, along with the information that we have. And he actually said this is a great plan going with the two wells. The areas where those wells are located are kind of in a sweet spot in the district. It's in the plume from Sheep Creek, the Sheep Creek Wash. And when you get further to the west, you get towards the county line, which is 10, 11, 12, 14, those wells over in that area, you start seeing the higher chromium rates. With the well we did last year with well 15, Sean, our chromium rates levels in that well are
1 to 2.
1 to 2. So this is like the sweet spot of the district, and we put a lot of time into locating those wells, including property that we already own, CEQA that's already been completed on some of these. So this was a logical next step. I don't know if that answered your question on how that affected the rates or not, but I think I touched on that. If you need more, I can go deeper.
No, that was a great answer. I just wanted everybody to understand that the chromium charge was going to get extended 18 months, but because of what we're doing here, rates will actually not increase as much as they were proposed.
That is correct. Significantly less.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sean? No? All right.
So having listened to the presentation, my comment to the board would be that I probably would disagree with staff and I would push to drill one well instead of two. I understand the redundancy and all that stuff, but I think chromium is just a up in the air government regulation, and to just go spend a ton of money to make sure we're good with it when we can be just okay by doing one well and see where we are. I think that's probably the way that I would go. Spend less money and see what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to item 6A, discussion and possible action regarding the Enterprise Capital Improvement Project schedule and hexavalent chromium mitigation options. Mr. Barnes.
Thank you. Included in your packet tonight is the 10-year capital improvement plan. It's called the Enterprise Capital Improvement Projects, and that it starts on page 124. Those are the ones we're dealing with, is the enterprise capital purchases, so 124, 125. The projects in red that you see where they're lined out, we have some Reservoir 7A. We have Phelan Road, some water line installations, 12-inch water lines. And if you look all the way across over to the right side, we're about $8 million worth of projects that we're going to not consider doing at this point. Looking up at the chromium mitigation projects for 25 and 26. We have $2 million for a well, $1.8 million for a well, and $2.7 million for the new tank at 6A. Of that $2.7 million, $2 million is coming with a grant from the federal government for that site. And we might even be able to get that project for a little bit less depending on what the costs are, but the tariffs might have changed the plans with that too. We'll have to wait and see where the cost of steel comes in. So we've discussed these charts or these graphs with the board in the past. So I won't spend a whole lot of time with that, but just for the audience so they can understand where we're going with that. On page 123, you have a list of the Chromium 6 project costs that we've paid for over the years. And then about halfway down the page, we have the remaining Chromium 6 mitigation projects. And we're recommending drilling the 2 wells rather than the initial one. And staff is recommending that the board modify the 10-year capital improvement project schedule to align with the changes of chromium mitigation, the water master plan, and the governmental CIP items. And I could go through each of these, but I think we've covered it pretty well. But if you'd like to, we could answer any questions.
All right. Greg?
No, I have any questions.
You're good? Gina? Down here? All right, no questions.
Okay. Thank you. And this would require a vote
Yes.
to move those.
All right, so I need a motion for this one.
I'll motion to approve the item.
All right, I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye, me.
All right, item passes, thank you. All right, so moving on to 6B, update on district projects.
Yes, George is going to give you an update on these.
Thank you, Mr. Parts. Civic Center project, as we had mentioned at the last board meeting, we advertised for the construction management services for the project. We received 3 bids. The RFQs were evaluated and we conducted interviews with 2 firms this afternoon. Following a call to a few of their references, we'll have a recommendation to the board at the May 14th meeting for the contract for construction management services for the Civic Center project. The question was asked after the award. Part of their scope of work was to do an evaluation on the construction plans and prepare a cost estimate. And that would take probably about a month or 2. And that would be ready to go out to bid for that project. So, and then at that time, we'll bring it to the board to go out and solicit bids for the construction of the Civic Center project. Any questions on the project for the Civic Center?
No?
Phelan Park Enhancement Project, and that's the 2 pickleball courts, a community garden, the fitness zones, and the driveway pathway improvements. We had a bid opening on April 8th. We received 7 bids. They range from $3.7 million to $970,000. We reviewed the qualifications of bidders per the public contract code, and there is a delay with the recommendation to award. There was a couple of questions that was asked by the winning bid that we require legal counsel to kind of answer. And also we had several bidders requesting the bids of the top 3 for evaluation. There was others that requested the other 6. They've had them for a couple of weeks already, so there hasn't been any calls on any challenges. So after checking our boxes, we'll bring this to the board for a recommendation to award at the May 14th board meeting as well. That I have nothing to report.
Okay.
I mean, I can jump on the 14-acre Phelan Park project, and that's a Joshua tree mitigation. we're still waiting for the Board of Supervisors to approve the notice of determination so we can move forward with the mitigation.
Got it.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 7, committee reports, beginning with engineering.
We didn't have an opportunity to meet, so
Right.
nothing to report out.
Thank you. Finance?
We met April 8th and we meet again May 6th.
Okay. Legislative?
We met back in March. We don't meet again until June. We have legislative days in 4 weeks, 3 weeks? 3.
Okay. Park and Rec, we haven't met for a while, and we meet in May.
May 13th.
May 13th. Woo, look at you. Thank you. And Waste and Recycling.
Waste and Recycling is scheduled to meet in June.
Perfect. All right, moving on to item number 8, Staff and General Managers Report. Anything to add?
I have nothing to add tonight.
Thank you.
I had a question on the report. It may just be that it hasn't. Sorry, it may just be that it hasn't been updated, but the report was talking about the plans for the Phelan Road, it's page 153, the Phelan Road widening project. And I was wondering where the information on the phase 3 and the date and stuff came from, because my understanding is that this has since been postponed because of concerns over not being able to receive a federal grant. So they were gonna start over in 2029, but maybe you guys had more information, so that's what my question was.
Yeah, what I understand right now is the lack of funding. So I don't think the project's been officially delayed unless somebody has a different answer, but it probably will be delayed. Bottom line.
I had read that they had
Yeah.
delayed it to 2029.
Yeah,
So I thought maybe
had
you
not heard
guys.
that for sure.
Yeah, that
knew
was,
more
that
than
was,
me.
that was probably in the engineer's report. That was taken from the last utility committee meeting that they had early in the month of last.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to number 9, Directors' Reports. Greg?
I have nothing to report, but I'd like to thank staff for the extensive overview on the hexavalent chromium project.
Thank you. Gina?
I have nothing to report.
All right, Deborah?
I attended the TAC meeting at the beginning of the month and was updated on where they are with their numbers. I also attended the Special Districts Leadership Academy and realized we have a shortfall in a policy that we need to get taken care of for AI. That only a few agencies, like 2 to 5% of agencies have one at all. Most businesses don't even have one, and it's parameters of which the employees would be covered and protected of what they stay in. So I'd highly recommend we look into possibly getting one as soon as possible so we don't have it come bite us in the end at some point, because there are places that have had issues. AI has a lot of hallucinations still happening where it wants to give you an answer, and if it doesn't have one, it's just going to put something out, but you can also go back and ask it to verify its answers. So be cautious as you use it, that it may not give you the answer, the real answers. Is the best answer, best thing I got out of it, and that you need to protect yourself with policies.
Thank you. Chuck?
I also attended the Special District Leadership Academy from April 21st to 23rd for the returning track session. There's a master class in governance, a GM evaluation class, and some protecting public funds, which were very good information there. And then I did have one request, and that's we established an ad hoc committee to look at the personnel manual policies and procedures, but we haven't scheduled a meeting yet. Can we get that meeting scheduled?
Yes, I'll talk to you two tonight and we'll pick a date.
Perfect, thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Can I change my answer?
Yes, ma'am.
I was under the understanding that I report when I've been to a meeting at the next regular board meeting. This is a special board meeting. Since they reported, I feel like I should report as well. I apologize. So I did attend the CSDA leadership meeting. The very last meeting out of that conference, I felt like was the best part for me. There was a lot of leadership training at the beginning of the meeting, which is good. It was good review. But it was about finance, and so that intrigued me. There's a couple things we probably need to address, and I was planning on bringing it up at the Finance Committee meeting, and we'll do that then, I think. And then in addition, I attended a meeting yesterday at the Mojave Water Agency on finance. It was Finance 201, so I guess a step up from that. And I learned a couple things from there, too, that I would bring up at the Finance Committee. Is that good?
Yeah, did Rick from CSDA teach that class?
Same guy.
Yeah, he is. He's very,
good.
very good. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, and I attended the ASB CSD dinner, LAFCO report. They went over the draft budget for '26 and spoke about their withdrawal from California LAFCO, working on an MOU to collaborate with LA, Orange, and San Diego counties. And then there was this guy who did this presentation. I can't remember what his name was. Oh, yes, it was George Cardenas. And he did an excellent job doing his report. So much of it is over my head, but it was a really good presentation on his web mapping, the water utility management software, and even something that I didn't even know about, the Survey 123 that we use for our vehicle inspection. So always learning something new.
Yeah, something I'd like to do, because I don't think all of the board members have actually seen what George does and what the engineering department is capable of doing. So I think I'd like to, at one of the future meetings, have him give a presentation on it. It's amazing the technology that we have for a small district with a limited budget compared to some of these agencies that have, $50 million budgets. We're years ahead of where they're at, and that helps keep our costs down, and George has done a terrific job with that.
Yep. Good job.
I have to give credit to staff that works in the engineering department. And of course, the general manager and the support from the board for allowing us to do what we do. I tell you that when we present and they say if they can do it, we can do it, and with the number of connections 10 times larger than ours, they're not quite doing it. So there's a sense of pride. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item 10, correspondence. Ms. Williams?
Yes. So we have some flyers in here that we have some stuff going on. We have our annual Earth Day art contest. The deadline for that is May 16th. We have our 2024 annual consumer confidence report now available. There's a flyer in there on how to access that. A leak flyer, how to find leaks in your irrigation system now that it's warming up. We have a free tire day coming up June 14th. And then we have some more summer activity flyers for painting classes, kids' archery lessons, and movie nights. And then we have some information here that is the state's response to the district's urban water use objective report. And a certificate of appreciation from the Registrar of Voters for the use of our center here. And then we have our public comment that was mentioned earlier.
Great, thank you very much.
Also, if any of the board members have not been to the archery classes that they have out by Mojave Archers, it's great if you have kids, grandkids, or no kids. It's free for the kids out there, and they are terrific. We've got that whole facility out there on the on that property by the fill station.
Nice, thank you. All right, moving on to item 11, review of action items. Were there any prior meeting action items? It's been a while.
There were none prior.
Great, all right, and current meeting action items?
Yes, we have a couple current ones regarding items 3B and 3F. On 3B, can you give me the numbers again of that or email them to me for the resolutions that were?
Oh, yeah.
A 3F, I had down 2023-04.
And 2020-01.
2021. Okay, so we will bring those items back to a future board meeting. And then also to look into an AI policy, and then the ad hoc scheduling, get something scheduled for that.
Perfect.
And I believe
Thank
that was
you.
everything.
All right, and then item 12, setting agenda for next board meeting, which will be May 14th. Does anyone have anything else they want to add to that one? No? All right, perfect. All right, and then at this time, we will recess to close session at 6:04 PM. Thank you.